We need to talk. It's been a rough ride. From a culture bent on burning itself down to attacks from within. But by the grace of God, we've been given a moment, a chance to make lasting changes. We can rebuild what's been torn down, but we have to build with what will last, the gospel of the kingdom. This April, let's sit down. Let's talk about what matters. And together, we'll build something that lasts. ReformCon 2025. Tickets are limited. Lord willing, we'll see you in Tucson.
Non-rockabotus must stop. I don't want to rock the boat. I want to sink it.
Are you going to bark all day, little doggy, or are you going to bite?
Brett, I love you, Jeff.
Delusional, yeah. Delusional's okay in your worldview. I'm an animal. You don't chastise chickens for being delusional. You don't chastise pigs for being delusional. So you calling me delusional using your worldview is perfectly okay. It doesn't really hurt. She hung up on me.
What?
Desperate times call for faithful men and not for careful men. The careful men come later and write the biographies of the faithful men, lauding them for their courage.
Go into all the world and make disciples. Not go into the world and make buddies. Not to make brosives.
Right.
Don't go into the world and make homies.
Right.
Disciples.
I got a bit of a jiggle neck. That's a joke, Pastor.
When we have the real message of truth, we cannot let somebody say they're speaking truth when they're not.
Take an amazing journey to a place that will blow your mind and move your heart so you will never be the same again.
When justice is done, it is a joy to the righteous, but terror to the evildoers. One who wanders from the way of good sense will rest in the assembly of the dead. And that is Proverbs 21, 15 through 16. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Apologia Radio. Luke the Bear here hosting today, trying to do all the things at once. Pastor Jeff got back late last night from Texas with our guest. We'll talk about that in a minute. So he's not here today. He's tending to some family things. What's up, little Zeezers? Got to my left.
Not much, man. Glad to be here.
We have a lot going on. I'm going to get into this quickly here because some important stuff we want to discuss, and I want to make sure we're spending lots of time on that. So first, let me just thank... Well, we're going to do an update on abortion and everything going on. We got bills all over the place, which is awesome. It's a good problem to have.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Stretches us a little thin, but it's a good problem to have. First I want to thank Ion Layer. They're a great sponsor, great partner with us in ministry. You got your patch on today?
No.
Oh, you pulled a Luke. I actually put mine on, I remembered. And we're grateful to them. You can go to ionlayer.com to get your NAD patch. Put Apologia in the coupon code and get a sweet discount there. And then, of course, we also got the new glutathione patches. The Master Antioxidant. Excited for that product as well. They got a coupon code for that as well. What was that? I'm just killing it today. Apologia, again, you get $100 off your first kit. So grateful for them. There's another ministry partner that we have that's one of my favorites, and that's Heritage Defense. And we happen to have one of the main guys from Heritage Defense on today.
El Capitan?
Yes, with a sweet library and Claymore behind him. Bradley Pierce, what's up, brother?
Hey, it's great to be with y'all. Thanks for having me.
Hey, why don't you tell us about Heritage Defense? Everyone's tired of hearing me talk about it, so let's hear it from the horse's mouth.
Hey, thank you for talking about it. I love you guys. Heritage Defense, we defend the parental rights of Christian homeschooling families against threats from Child Protective Services. So if a social worker knocks on your door with some kind of false allegation or overblown allegation of abuse or neglect, if you're a member, you can call us 24/7, be immediately connected with an attorney who can defend you. If you need an attorney there locally in your state, connect with one. We pay their fees, and all that's included with your membership. You can even just call if you just have questions about your parental rights, schedule a call with one of our attorneys, go on our website. And even if you're not a member, actually, you can just go to our website for free and sign up. Just give us your email address and get access to our law and policy vault and get access to laws about parental rights in all 50 states and find out what's the law in my state about, car seats for children or children being home alone or babysitting laws or newborn laws like vaccines and Hep B and vitamin K and all this and a whole lot of other stuff in there. And so you can go check that out for free. You don't even have to be a member.
Is that a new feature?
That's so useful.
We put that out about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Even know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah.
I'll make sure I start.
That's a one-stop shop for all your parental
needs.
Yeah.
And questions.
And questions, yes.
And questions. Excellent. So Jeff was just in Texas. You're in Texas still. Jeff was just there with you yesterday. Tell us about your bill you got going in there.
Yeah, so we have a bill of equal protection, abolition bill to abolish abortion here. This is our 5th session to have it. Our legislature meets mercifully only every 2 years, mercifully because most of the bills they pass are bad, and but we'd love a bill to abolish abortion every year. But so we've had it here since 2017, and Jeff came yesterday and was part of our rally and supporting that. And then the day before, we were at the University of Texas campus with Jeff, reaching students there, and we just had a great time. So grateful for him coming out, as he has done many times before, and so grateful for all y'all and y'all's support for that.
So what's the status then of the bill in Texas?
So in Texas, we are collecting co-authors. We have 17 co-authors that have signed on to the bill, which is the most ever. So we're seeing that across the country. We're seeing more co-authors than ever.
Right.
And we're seeing, we like in North Dakota, we got a committee vote.
Right.
Then we got a House floor vote, more votes than ever before. And even just yesterday in Oklahoma, there was a vote, a committee vote, Dusty Devers carrying the Senate bill there. And that committee, it still died, but there were 2 committee members who did vote for it.
Right.
Well, that same committee heard the bill that Warren Hamilton carried, I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago, and that committee, 0 members voted in favor of it. So we've gone from 0 to 2.
Yeah.
All you need is 2. All you need is 2 of them 2 more to flip.
Yeah.
And you've got the committee.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is what progress looks like.
Beautiful.
This is what winning is looking like, and it's happening all across the country.
That's important for people to hear, because in this discussion about, is the abolition route the route that actually produces progress?
Yeah.
Well, I think you can look at the efforts that have gone forward over the past couple of years now, and you can objectively say, hey, not only is this culturally taking root, but it's also taking root in the legislatures in a way that's very tangible. Like we have footage of inside these rooms where men and women are arguing for the lordship of Christ and the authority of Scripture over the entire legislative process, including the protection of the fatherless. That in and of itself, I think we were talking about this last week or the week before, when have you ever seen that? On an issue where people are just openly proclaiming Christ, his word, his authority over the magistrates. To see that itself, the gospel being brought into the halls of our legislatures, that's incredibly encouraging.
It's amazing. It's incredible.
Yeah. This is the kind of incrementalism that we've been talking about, right? This is the kind of good. This is what we're talking about. One vote at a time, one state at a time, one committee at a time, and that's what's happening.
It's discipleship is what it is. Speaking with Jeff again, he wanted me to mention in Oklahoma, he promised we would give a shout out to the reps that were righteous, and that was Shane Jett and Lisa Standridge. So good job on you guys. But and then there was So it was 6 no votes, 4 of them Republicans.
4 Republicans that voted no.
And those Republicans, if you're in Oklahoma, need to hear from you. So that's Darcy Jetch, Paul Rosino, and nope, those are the same. Who are the other 2? No, I don't know.
Isn't that amazing? The most consistent bill for life ever heard in the state.
Yeah.
Defeated by Republicans. Still don't get tired of hearing that.
Yeah, it seems to be the case. It happened in North Dakota.
Yep.
So we got a bill here in Georgia. Very excited about Georgia. We have 21 co-sponsors, which is, I saw 22% of the House.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So that'll be next week. We got Idaho is in. We're working on a pastors meeting there. We got Iowa is in, working on something there.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama,
I think is going in. It'll be soon.
Ohio, Kentucky,
South Carolina.
There's so many we can't even hardly keep up with them. So praise God for that. So that I'll just bring me into the next topic here, and that is we mentioned the pro-life industry and the pro-life Republicans that are stopping our bills.
Yep.
And one of the leaders that is leading the charge against our bills is Kristan Hawkins, from
President of Students for Life.
Yes. So she's created quite a stir the last week.
Yeah. And I think what we're seeing in the legislative realm is what's creating these stirs. I think one of the things that's most encouraging about these bills going forward and these lines being drawn, if you will, like God's people putting this forward in the legislatures and saying, here's the line right here. And that constant pushing of, what Greg Bonson talks about in Apologetics, pushing the antithesis, right? There's no neutrality here. And so you have Christians that are saying, this is murder. God commands you not to murder. He commands you to do justice for the fatherless. And there's no middle ground here. Yep. If this is what we say it is, then we have to treat it that way with our law. Our law has to recognize that this is homicide, and we have to treat this homicide the same way that we treat other forms of homicide too. And that, I think, that line in the sand is what's creating a divide between the mainstream pro-life lobby, organizations, pro-life establishment, pro-life industry, and those, even not just in the abolitionist community, in the abolitionist world, but the pro-lifers who were like, wait a minute, I thought this is what we were after all along. Don't we all want to treat abortion like homicide? Isn't it murder for everybody? Don't our laws need to reflect that? Well, apparently there are some that are in leadership in the pro-life organizations, these major organizations that use lots of money to not end abortion every year, that have perhaps, shall we say, a different goal in mind.
Yeah, so there's a number of reasons why why Kristen's been kind of under fire lately. For starters, somebody I don't know exactly who did it, took a picture of her and kind of photoshopped the sign she was holding.
Right.
And what did it
say?
Right.
The caption itself was fabricated, but it is indicative of what she actually believes about this. She does believe that women are the second victims of abortion, and that they should have legal immunity and impunity to commit abortions. That because they're the second victims, we should be focusing on the abortionist, the abortion industry, trying to stop the flow of abortion pills, et cetera, et cetera. So that meme went up, and I think that there's been a reaction on her part to that, which has kind of really sent, abolitionists to social media to combat that as well. And then she's gone on a blocking spree, and
she filed a lawsuit.
And filed a lawsuit, or threatened legal action, I think, shall we say. That's the way how she put it. Threatened legal action against Protestia for publishing a post. And they've responded to that saying, we know our rights. This is free speech. If you want to take legal action against us over a meme, that's protected as under the First Amendment. So the point in all of this is that there's a lot going on because of this work. Yeah. And it is, I think, forcing people to actually identify where they stand and to take sides.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I'll mention just briefly, then I want to bring Brad in the conversation, how this has affected us in our bills, right? So, we had our bill in Louisiana in 21, and it was the major pro-life
70 mainstream
leaders,
organizations.
One of them being Students for Life, and I believe she signed that.
I don't know. I don't think that she was on that one.
Was she not on that one?
But the one that we're going to bring up here in regards to North Dakota.
Right. Okay.
She was specifically Students for Life was on that one.
Yeah.
But the other mainstream organizations, March for Life, Susan B. Anthony, they all signed the Louisiana letter.
Right. And so that was mentioned several times in North Dakota from those opposing our bill, that specific letter. So there was a letter in North Dakota then with her signature on it. And I've seen the receipts of people within Students for Life saying, hold on, why are we opposing this? And she's claiming that it was taken from the Louisiana letter and photoshopped by abolitionists.
Yeah, without her knowledge.
And she didn't know anything about the bill in North Dakota, and they weren't against it. And it's like, well, then why is your signature and your organization on here?
Bradley, is that true? Are abolitionists just a bunch of meanies and jerks who are trying to get Kristan Hawkins in trouble? It's a loaded question, I know, but
that is a loaded question. I mean, what happened is that, 2022, like you said, there was this 77 pro-life organizations against the Louisiana bill. At that time, Kristan Hawkins didn't sign on to that. So there were some people out there who were like, oh, well, maybe she actually doesn't oppose equal protection. Right. But that all came crashing down. Actually, in April of last year, 2024, there was a resolution carried before the North Dakota Republican Party state convention by Amber Vibetto with North Dakota Can, an abolitionist up there. I think y'all know her.
Yep.
And she carried that resolution, and it got through. Again, this is like a classic, like, hey, it's deja vu. It got through this Republican committee with like 7-1 vote, and then it was going to the floor of all the delegates, all the Republican delegates, and pro-life organizations dropped a letter in North Dakota. And again, this wasn't even the piece of legislation or a bill. This was just a Republican Party resolution.
Amazing.
And Susan B. Anthony, National Right to Life, they dropped this letter that says, we oppose this resolution in support of equal protection because it criminalizes women. And they even ratified, right? They kind of mentioned the 2022 letter. So anyway, Kristan Hawkins signed that letter. She signed that North Dakota letter opposing the Republican Party resolution, which mentioned and kind of adopted the language of the 2022 letter. So technically, Kristan did not sign the 2022 letter, not in 2022, but she's kind of signed it now.
Right.
And even if you don't think she has now, like, she signed the North Dakota letter, clearly coming out against equal protection. And she's made it very clear, in other contexts, that she opposes equal protection. She's written,
that's what she believes.
for Fox News, gone on a podcast and said, no, women shouldn't be criminalized. And so she's been very clearly opposed to equal protection for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Well, we'll move on from that. I just wanted to bring that up because it's been obviously a hot topic the last couple of weeks, and figured it'd be good to weigh in on that.
Yeah, and now she's like blocking, blocking everybody.
Yeah.
Blocked. I think she blocked y'all, right?
Probably.
Blocked me. And
maybe,
blocked,
maybe not.
Everybody who's ever even, thought of her was blocked.
Zach just showed me a video of a guy that was she was in line at some campus or like answering questions at some campus. Did you see this, Brad?
I have not. I've seen that the video exists.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't had time to stop and watch it.
So she was answering questions, and this guy waited in line to talk to her, and then she refused to talk to them. So he stands right next to her.
Right next
He starts
to her.
doing this live video with her in the background talking, just burning her.
She won't talk to us, all that. Yeah. I don't know who the gentleman is or who he's with, but obviously he's an abolitionist, and he's
fired up,
taking the liberty to do what he thinks needs to be done about this. And to an extent, that's exactly what does need to be done in terms of exposing the fact that these people that we've trusted to end legal abortion for a long time now have not done that.
Yeah.
And they're actively opposing the efforts to do so.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so let's just transition to the next conversation then, because this is going to be a little more lengthy, and we were talking before, it needs to be handled a little more carefully with some kid gloves. So first, so President Trump signed an executive order, an IVF executive order this week. I believe today's Thursday, like Monday or Tuesday. So Brad, being the good lawyer that he is, actually read the executive order. He was like, well, if we're going to discuss this, that means I actually have to read it, which is great, because my concern, and we'll talk more about this, my concern is that people aren't taking the time to read this sort of thing, and they're just carte blanche burning things to the ground and not actually knowing what it says. And so, Brad, why don't you just bring us into that? What did the executive order say? What's problematic about it? And we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, the executive order speaks very positively about IVF in a very kind of blanket way, and obviously we can talk about why that's a problem, a major problem. As far as what the executive order actually orders right now, it's not, there's nothing not going to impact anyone right now. As far as from a legal perspective, obviously it has a major cultural impact, and we'll talk about that. But the actual legal impact of it it just says within 90 days of the date of this order, the assistant to the president for domestic policy shall submit to the president a list of policy recommendations on protecting IVF access and aggressively reducing out-of-pocket and health plan costs for IVF treatment. That's it. That's the only substantive, legally substantive part of the order. It just orders that within 90 days that some policy recommendations be made on those fronts. So no actual legal impact on anyone yet, but definitely a huge cultural impact that we can talk about.
Yeah. So so before we get into this conversation, I want to just mention why this matters, why this is important. Obviously, aside from the fact of saving babies, the reason it matters is because these are the arguments that were used to kill our bill in North Dakota. It worked. The pro-life, it's coming from the pro-life industry. It's not coming from the liberals. It's not coming from the left. It's not coming from Planned Parenthood. It's coming from conservatives. And so they use it in North Dakota to kill our bill. They're going to be using it in Texas. They're going to be using it in Georgia. All the different states, it worked, so they're going to use it, and they're going to run that play. And so, we were talking before, as those that want to see abortion ended, we're fighting for equal protection. We need to be able to answer these objections, and not just with just a general whitewashing. We need to actually understand what we're saying, why we're saying, why it's a problem, what's a problem, what's good, what's bad. And I think I'm seeing a lot of, a lot of people that are fighting for abolitionism that are probably uneducated. And in order to really be able to fight this and to get our bills passed, we need to not be uneducated. we need to know what we're talking about, or we're just going to keep running this silly cycle. So
yeah, I was just gonna say, and then maybe turn it over to Brad to open this up. I just think balance overall in this discussion when talking about IVF. Obviously, you're dealing with something that is very sensitive for people and a very touchy subject, especially when you live in a fallen world and you have couples, good men, good women, who are dealing with the reality of infertility and walking through that valley. And as pastors, you've ministered to couples that are facing that exact thing. This is something that they want so badly. They are on their knees before God begging for a child. Obviously the scriptures open up this reality to us about God being the one who opens and closes the womb, and we have all these examples of people crying out for children because we know children are such a gift and a blessing, and every child created, regardless of the means, is made in the image of God. They're a blessing, and we're glad that they're here, whatever the means of their conception were. So we always have to just, I think, lay that foundation here and be sensitive to the reality that infertility is, it's part and parcel of living in a fallen world. And there are people that need ministering to. There are children that are created through this process and otherwise in the adoption system that need care. The church needs to take care of them and engage in that work of adoption, and we need to be doing everything we can to make it more affordable for families to adopt. So those are just some preliminary comments, Brad.
Yeah, and I'll just sorry, real quick, and then I'll turn over. I mean, just as an example of what you're talking about, we have a woman in our church now who has lived out Proverbs 24. She's adopted one of these snowflake babies and is pregnant with that child. Amazing. Praise the Lord for that. And so I've seen people who would be abolitionists were actually upset with us a couple years ago when this family started talking about doing this, and they were upset with us because we weren't just condemning IVF with just and it was whoa, she's doing an amazing thing. She has a life in her and in her womb. So my concern is if we just start, like I said, carte blanche, calling this objectively evil, that's not precise.
So we're talking about a child who, it created through the process of in vitro was frozen, essentially.
Yes.
That's what you mean when you say snowflake baby,
Yes.
right? We're talking about the cryogenic part of the process in which, these children that are conceived, these embryos, these human beings made in the image of God, are essentially put on ice and stored away, which, again, not condoning that in any way, but you have Christians that are wanting to save these lives and rescue those that are being taken away to slaughter. So again, balance here in this discussion.
Yeah. So Brad, I'll just bring you in then, from a legal side, and this is going to get into our bills, because our bills specifically address this, right? So I'll just let you run with it right now.
Yeah. Well, just one more thing, just on that, just so there's no confusion about snowflake adoption. Right. So this couple, they did not create, right? They didn't sign up to create this in vitro, fertilized. They didn't sign up for IVF, right? They signed up to adopt somebody else's baby that was frozen in IVF, right? Just so everybody's clear, that's how it's a snowflake adoption, right? You're not saying, hey, I'm doing IVF. It's like, no, someone else has, released, signed to release their children to be their children in storage.
Right.
It's a weird way of talking about it.
Weird.
That's what's happening for someone else to adopt. So that's a couple that does that. That they're heroes for doing that. That's wonderful. And as far as I know, every abolitionist I know, supports that. And there may be some people out there like, well, is that actually supporting the industry or not? But as far as I'm concerned, absolutely, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So that's great. This is something that we have to, we're to talk about sensitively, because there's people that are born, right? There's people that are conceived in IVF and are born, and their lives are incredible and made in the image of God and equally valuable with every single other person, right? The circumstances of your conception do not determine your value, right? The fact that you're made in God's image, that's what determines your value and the sanctity of your life. And so regardless of where the sperm met the egg and you came into existence, right, you have the same value. Your child has the same value. If you were conceived in that way, you have the same value. That's where we have to start. But that's also means that every single other child who has not yet been born or never made it to birth that was conceived in IVF, we have to say the same thing about them. We have to say they were equally valuable. They are equally valuable if they're stored. Right? They are made in the image of God. And so what do we do about that? Right? What do we do about their lives that are equally valuable as the born IVF babies and every other baby and every other human being? What do we do about them, and what should we as Christians think about the entire process of IVF?
Yeah.
That's so interesting, Brad. When we talk about abolition of abortion, one of the chief arguments that we make is that the child in the womb is just as valuable as the child outside the womb and has to be protected in the same way with the same laws that protect our lives. And then you just made the same exact precise distinction there in the IVF process. Every child that's here now, aka walking around, or outside of the womb, is just as valuable as those on ice. So again, it's the same consistent argument, is that we have to treat these people equally by virtue of their humanity. That's what makes them equal in the sight of God, and it's what should make them equal in our sight, no matter how small they are or out of sight they are. Right?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So Brad, then, for those that don't understand even how this process works and what's wrong with the IVF industry, because again, we're going to get into really defining what's ethical and what's unethical, right? And so the way that a lot of it's being done now is unethical, and that's what we really want to bring people into. So if you could just let our listeners know, explain the process, explain why it's an issue, what the problems are.
Yeah, well, from the very beginning, when most people hear about IVF, they hear creating a baby, right? They hear, oh, someone wasn't able to get pregnant, they weren't able to have a baby, and now they are. That is awesome, right? There's now a new human being and this child born, right? That is so awesome, and yes, it is. And so it's like why would anyone be against that then?
Yeah.
If IVF is about creating babies, why would people who are pro-life or abolitionists or anybody else, why would you be against that? And it's because of the process. It's because of what it takes to get to that one baby born, right, that people can see and say, why would anyone be against this? It's the process of how you get there. So the way that the process looks like is, they obviously take, harvest eggs from the mother and sperm from the father, and nothing at that point, nothing homicidal or anything like that at that point, right? But then they then take the sperm and fertilize the eggs, and at that moment, of fertilization, now you have a brand new human being with their own unique DNA. That there's no one else in the world like them, and never has been, never will be. And now what they do is they fertilize a bunch. This is the most, what I'm explaining, there may be some exceptions to this, but this is the most common approach. That they fertilize, maybe a dozen, maybe 2 dozen, and then they then grade them, right? And at this point, these are now human beings, right? That they're now human beings with their own unique DNA, and they are they will grow as long as they have oxygen, nutrients, safe place, right? They will continue to grow on their own, right, as their own separate unique entity, unique person. So they take them and they grade them based on how strong they are, how likely they are to implant and be a successful birth. A, B, C, D, that they'll grade them. And so they'll then take the ones that don't grade well and discard many of those. The ones that get a lower grade, maybe they'll, the kind of an intermediate grade, they'll freeze those. And then the one with the strongest grade, then they will maybe freeze some of those, but then they'll then do the first cycle of trying to implant those into the mother, and for those to implant into her uterus. Around, I believe, 40 to 60% of those will successfully implant, and the remainder, will be lost essentially as a miscarriage.
Right.
And so all along the way, at the grading process, at the storage process, which is freezing, right, cryogenic freezing process, at the thawing process, and then at the implantation process, you have losses, right? You have deaths
all along the way.
All along the way. And so it's difficult, from what I've seen, the research that I've seen, it's difficult to estimate the exact number of deaths, but it appears to be between 20 to 30 children die. And I say children meaning from fertilized eggs, if you want to put it like the pro-choice people, right? Children will die for every one successful live birth. And so that's what the process looks like. Again, much of it, they are intentionally destroying the unwanteds, and or if not, just throwing them out, conducting scientific experiments on them, which ultimately destroy them. And then from there, sometimes when they put them in to implant in the mother's uterus, they'll put in several, and sometimes they'll all implant. And at that time, very often if parents consent to it, then they'll do what they call selective reduction, which is simply an abortion. They'll go in and they will remove the children that have implanted in the mother's uterus that the mother does not want, and reduce the numbers down, to the one, that the mother does want. So that's what's happening, every step of the way through the IVF process. And even the ones that are not intentionally destroyed, there's just a whole lot of attrition, because it's dangerous and risky to the children, and many clinics are not handling them with care. Even the ones that they do create, they're not handling them with the kind of care that they should, handle the lives of human beings.
Yeah.
Would it be accurate to say that that aspect of the process, grading human beings on their characteristics, is akin to a eugenic process?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like eugenics.
That's what it is.
It's
Yeah,
I don't think there's any way of escaping the force of that. I mean, we're talking about Margaret Sanger, like selectivity on which humans are more desirable based on these traits or these characteristics. I don't think there's any way out of the fact that, these humans are, these specimens, they'd probably refer to these children as these human beings, these human lives as, these are more desirable. So these make the cut. And then on this side of the line are the intermediately desirable ones along with the poor ones. And those are just discarded through the same process. It's interesting. You use the phrase selective reduction, which is just abortion.
Yeah.
And that's just another way of, it's a euphemism for abortion, for murder.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay. Excellent. Thank you. I mean, hopefully that's helpful for a lot of people. And I think, a lot of Christians that are excited about IVF probably don't understand everything that goes into it. So, again, we'll get into how this affects our bills, but it's a question I have, and I think I know what you're going to say, Bradley. Is there a way currently for IVF to be done ethically?
Yeah, like if you could do it in a way that didn't create like countless embryos, and you don't have this element of selective reduction, is there a way to make it life affirming as people want it to be?
Yeah.
I'll start with the short answer, and that is that I'm not aware of that. Like with our current technology, of a way to do it ethically. So, I guess that you like in theory it could be done like this, right? That you take the sperm, one sperm, one egg, from the mother, or maybe you can take multiple, right? Because there's nothing there's nothing bad about taking multiple sperm or multiple eggs, right? Or at least nothing like homicidal, like we're talking about. Right, okay, so you take multiple of this, all right, but you just put them together one at a time, right? Put one sperm, one egg, put them together. Now you have a zygote, human being in the zygote state of development, and it begins to grow. Now you have an embryo, or a human being in the embryonic stage of development. You have one, right? Now you then take that and you seek to implant that into the mother and see if the pregnancy takes. Right, see if the child implants in the uterus, and if not, then okay, now we do another cycle, but we only do one. In theory, that would certainly be ethical in the sense that it is not it's not homicidal, it's not intentionally destroying or even recklessly really destroying. Like you're doing what you can. In practice, I'm not sure that, for those who are trying to conceive, they're having a problem conceiving. I think the death rate may be even higher than, the miscarriage rate at that point. And essentially you're having, again, because you're not grading the children as far as who's going to be strongest, right? You're just doing them one at a time, just like if you were getting pregnant. Yeah. Except it's, less natural, so there's less success. I'm not sure that I'm not sure it would actually increase the likelihood of success of getting pregnant. That's what I'm not sure of.
Yeah.
So under today's technology, from what I've seen, because of the number lost, even not intentionally, and even not handling their lives recklessly, because of the number lost. I personally don't know of a way to do it ethically. Others may have differences of opinion about that. I think we can disagree. I think we can. I think the fundamental issue is, are we intentionally destroying them, and are we handling their lives with care? I think that's the primary issue, and the way it's being done today, we're not.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful. Like the technological limitation I think helps us see it a little bit more clearly. Like I'm willing to entertain, the arguments that well-meaning Christians have, I think, about, the problem also is we're commodifying human life. we're separating children from sex, the sexual act itself. Like we're taking what God meant to be experienced in this way, and we're doing it under glass, right? Like I'm willing to entertain that. And then there's also the things on the far end of the extreme, which is, okay, I mean, gay couples are also using this because they can't naturally conceive a child, so they're using this as a means to procreate, right? And then, you know, the Christless conservative element of, you know, we want big families and large families are a blessing and more kids, so we're just going to, you know, conceive them all through this process of IVF with multiple different partners and so on and so forth. I mean, you're kind of seeing those things too. But, you know, are children entitled also to, you know, the right to have their two parents, right? Is that the right of a child to have, you know, their natural parents be their children? So I think all of these things are well-meaning questions that we have to wrestle with and also have satisfying answers for.
Yeah.
It also, you know, another kind of, you know, what it helps to facilitate a lie to women that, hey, you can just freeze your eggs now, and then later when you're in your, you know, you've got your college degree and career success, like, all right, then you can be a mom later on. And, you know, and then what they don't tell them is, like, you know, I mean, it's going to be still, even with IVF, it's going to be, it's not 100%.
Right.
And you know, by delaying it, you're actually, you know, lowering your likelihood of being able to be fertile and being able to bear children. And then it's also kind of one of these, it's a classic American, like, hey, let's, instead of solving why we're unhealthy,
yes,
let's just deal with the actual symptom instead of dealing with the cause. Like, why is there major infertility issues? You know, maybe we should be looking into that instead of, like, well, let's just treat this one symptom of it. You know, but again, it's kind of classic American, like, hey, there's a pill for that.
Right.
You know, this is like, hey, there's IVF for that.
Yeah.
And you're talking about this is the discussion about the cultural aspect of this stuff too.
Right.
Like the societal norms behind, you know, having a career and pursuing those things as the optimal thing. And then when you're ready, then when you feel like you've done enough, then you can start thinking about a family.
Yeah.
But so I feel like there's a lot of promises up front of what it offers. You know, it's pro-family in that way. Go ahead, do your thing. But, you know, on the other end, I think women themselves, I would venture to say there's a lot of women out there who are in a place right now where that biological clock, if it hasn't run out, it's teetering down, and, you know, they realize that it's not possible anymore. And there's a lot of devastation in the midst of that for women that weren't able to have children.
Yeah. Yeah. So
before we get to the bills, can I talk about one more thing?
Go for it.
And that's this, again, because I feel like anytime you talk about this, it's, you know, people who are struggling with infertility, you know, almost like, well, then what am I supposed to do? And, you know, I would say a few things. You know, number one, you know, we trust God that He has, you know, we don't do evil that good may come. Yes, a child being born, beautiful, wonderful thing. But that doesn't mean we do it at any costs, right? There's lines that we should not cross. And secondly, like we already talked about earlier, there's something called snowflake adoption or embryo adoption, where there's lots of the children that have been conceived in IVF that are in storage right now. I'm not sure the exact number. Don't quote me as some kind of source on this, but I think I remember hearing it's something like 600,000.
It's a lot, yeah.
Or maybe even, I may be even way out. It's at least that, that are in storage, that can be adopted. And so I know we all, you know, I know it's like, it's natural to want, you know, your own child in your own image kind of thing. But there are all these children that have been abandoned by their parents. And if nobody adopts them, then they're going to die.
Yeah.
And so if God has, you know, again, something for everybody to consider. You know, it's certainly, again, before going and creating more, and then many more will die, there's many that already are there, and it can be adopted. And I know people personally that have adopted, several couples that have adopted these children and it's been beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. So I'd certainly encourage people to look into that, and then also adoption of infants as well.
Yeah.
Looking into to that as well, and so there are many many ways to go about it. Seeking to adopt, and that's a wonderful thing. It's something that God does, as He's adopted us, and so that's a beautiful thing to pursue. But right now, the process of IVF, especially the way that it's done today, there's significant problems with it that it just Christians need to look at.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's super duper helpful.
Yeah.
And I mean, so I was just kind of thinking, obviously ethically is the legal term, so I'm thinking, this is a pretty incredible piece of technology.
Yeah.
Right. It's amazing, right? And I borrowed this quote from Doug Wilson a lot. He said we should view technology with grateful suspicion, right? So we can be grateful for it, but we should handle it suspiciously. And so the question from just a pastoral, spiritual position is is it being used to the glory of God, right? And I think that's a good way to think about it. In trying to just talk through this form of technology.
Whose hands is this in? If this is in the hands of unbelievers and people that are in rebellion against God, there could be a great deal of destruction done.
Sure.
And then there is being a great deal of destruction done on a mass scale. I mean, we're talking about thousands, if not millions, of children and their lives destroyed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So that brings us in then. So I think the first time I remember hearing this objection was Louisiana. Maybe you need to correct me on that, Brad, but that's the first time I remember hearing this objection. Because I remember we had you on. I remember you were in the car, I think, driving, and we had you on to talk about it. So what do our equal protection bills say about IVF? One. Two, what are the objections we're hearing back? And then obviously we need to correct those objections.
Yeah. How do we respond?
Yeah. So take it away.
Yeah, I would say first of all, the bills don't mention IVF. The bills don't even really mention abortion. Because what we're talking about here is there's already laws against homicide that protect our lives from someone, murdering us. And so our bills just say, hey, the same laws that protect our lives from homicide, those should also protect the lives of people who have not yet been born from homicide. And so now we have the criminal law, right, which we call homicide. Then we also have the civil law, which is called wrongful death. So if someone negligently causes the death of someone else, it's not not criminal, but if you negligently or grossly negligently cause the death of someone else, all right, now you can be sued for that. So most of our bills, also have that element, both criminal and civil equal protection. So all laws protecting life, both civil and criminal, provide, equal protection under our legislation. So yeah, they don't mention IVF, they don't really mention abortion or any of that. So really, it's simply, is there a practice that someone is doing anywhere, whether it's a abortionist in a clinic, whether it's a mom ordering abortion pills, or whether it's an IVF doctor, if anyone is intentionally destroying human beings, the lives of human beings, that's homicide. That's homicide. And so the bill would prohibit that. If anyone's doing that, that's homicide. That would be prohibited under all equal protection legislation, regardless of where it's occurring. If it's occurring in an abortion clinic, occurring in someone's home with a pill, or occurring in a clinic, a fertility clinic, the bill would say no, you cannot do that. That's a crime.
Yeah. And
if you know what you're doing, right? It's just like any other crime. You not only have to cause the death, you have to intend it, right? You have to have intended to cause that death. And if you intend to do that and you do that, then that's murder. And so the bill would prohibit that. And then the civil part of equal protection just says that if you negligently cause the death of a human being, okay, well then, yeah, it's not a crime, but there's some liability for that. You've now caused the death of someone through your carelessness.
Yeah.
And so, the effect of the bill would be that they could not destroy embryos, and they would need to treat them, with any that they did create, with the care that you would apply if you really, were treating them like human beings. You need to handle with care.
That's really beautiful when you think about the fact that it doesn't even mention the process itself.
Right.
Or abortion. Here's what it is. It's a line in the sand, and it is everything that we do surrounding the topic of human life has to be done with these considerations in mind. Every human being from fertilization is the imago Dei and must be protected in the same way as everybody else. Okay. Now that we've laid that down, everything we do surrounding human life has to conform to that standard. Go.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's what the bill is. Yeah. So whether that's the practice of IVF, whether that's the practice of procreation, whether that's the practice of, taking someone's life, not taking someone's life, all of that owes or bends to the truth of the standard, and that is the sanctity and value of human life. Yeah. That's what needs to be upheld. And there are different qualifications and different classifications, as Bradley's laying out, for how we go about, determining the difference between, negligence or active responsibility or first degree or second degree. All of those things need to be taken into consideration. But I just love the beauty and the simplicity, really, of that. It's just saying, here's human life, therefore everything else has to bend to this reality that God has made the world in this way, where people are protected. Our laws acknowledge it. We acknowledge it. So we need to protect them.
Yeah. So, right. Exactly. So what's crazy then is we also saw this in North Dakota is the arguments against the bill are, well, this is going to make, IVF impossible. This is going to shut down this industry. This is blah, blah, blah. And like you're saying, the bill doesn't even mention IVF, but then they take this and run with it. So, what are some of those arguments? I'll let you lay those out, Bradley. What are some of those arguments, and how do we respond to them?
Well, and let me just say this up front. I welcome this. I welcome this discussion because what it's doing. Well, let's point out a couple things. Something that we saw even before in North Dakota. So in Alabama, if folks remember last year, the Alabama Supreme Court. There was a lawsuit about this IVF clinic that had just very negligently, handled these children, in storage, and some of them were destroyed, some of them died, and so the parents of these children sued the clinic, and as for wrongful death, that hey, you did not handle the lives of our children with care, and they died. And there needs to be some restitution for that. There needs to be some accountability for that. And the Alabama Supreme Court, so the clinic said, no, they weren't children. They weren't people. They were property.
Right.
And the Alabama Supreme Court said, no, they're people.
Wow.
They're people from the moment of fertilization. Well, then that caused a huge uproar.
Yeah.
And the IVF clinics then in Alabama said, well, we can't even operate here then, which that immediately tells us something. All they're being required to do under that, finding in that case was to just handle them with care, right? Just handle their lives with care. And they were like, no, we can't do that. That'll completely shut down all of our operations. It's like, well, then it sounds like you've got some real problems with the way you operate.
Right. Right.
That's a great point.
And then we saw this in North Dakota as well, right? We had this hearing, this committee hearing, and this IVF doctor came to this committee hearing. And what I encourage everybody to go listen to her, even though she was there against the bill. She actually lays out the whole IVF process.
Yes.
And if you can, now that you've heard what we've talked about here, I think you should be able to hear through her euphemisms.
Right.
And hear that she describes what we just described. It's even more detail. And as someone who does it every day. And what was interesting, again, the bill doesn't mention IVF at all, but she's like, no, this bill outlaws homicide. That's going to affect IVF. Wait a second. what? Are you
Is
committing
IVF
homicide? Over
homicide?
there? You're committing homicide over there?
Right.
And even one of the
Goodness.
legislators said, he asked her a question. He said, well, okay, I get you don't like the defining life at fertilization, us protecting it from that. So would you be okay? What if we defined it life at the beginning at implantation? So then life is, we don't actually protect life in the lab. It's only after the baby's implanted in the mother that, that we protect that life. And even that, she said, no, that's still too early. It's like, whoa, wait, this baby's implanted in the mother's uterus already. And that's even saying like you can do whatever you want with that child before that point.
Yeah.
And that's not good enough for you. I mean, it tells you a lot about the IVF industry. And this is a debate that we have to have. That's inevitable. And so, certainly it's going to affect the discussion of the bills. But we have to be able to talk about it and explain it, but also to do it in a way that we can't just say IVF is bad, right? Because again, most people when they hear IVF is bad, when they hear that they think, wait, creating children is bad,
right?
What's wrong with you? It's like, no, you really need to do the work and put in the effort to actually explain what's really going on and why it's bad, right? Don't just show people. And that's one reason why I think actually having these bills that actually bring these, IVF folks out of the woodwork, out of anonymity where they've been able to operate, to actually come and to say, actually, I oppose this bill that just prohibits prenatal homicide because that's going to affect IVF.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, what are you people doing over there?
Yeah,
right.
I'm excited about that. It's really, yes, I don't know that it had a huge effect in North Dakota. It was certainly an argument used. But what I'm excited about, though, is that it is an educational opportunity. And so that bill may have died this session, but I'm encouraged by how many people are now hearing about that and seeing that. And that means that hopefully there are Christians and non-Christians even that hear that and they say, wait a second. The people that would have gone and done IVF and have a lot of, children lost along the way, will say, give it a second thought. Like, wait a second, I'm not going to do that. And so I'm grateful for that. This discussion, although again, it's I would say it's in the short term, making it, some folks who, more hesitant about supporting the bills, but it's also educating the society more about what's really going on in these IVF clinics. So I'm grateful for that.
It's almost like they're outing themselves when
Yeah.
they step forward saying, wait a minute, this is going to make the homicide of preborn people illegal. It's like, yeah, that's what we were going for, is treating everybody the same under the law, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know what's crazy, and I want to sidetrack the conversation, but that sparked a really fascinating conversation in the committee hearing, because then you remember the whole conversation then was about souls and when does someone obtain a soul, and it was like, when has this ever been discussed in a legislative hearing before?
Wow,
it was amazing. To even hear like legislators like reading scripture, being knit together in your mother's womb, like, no, that's when your soul starts, like. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, so I appreciate
awesome.
it. So, like that's the kind of conversations these lead to. By the way, that was your assistant sitting behind the speaker, right? During the hearing, wasn't that I can't remember his name. The young guy, your youngest, what's his name?
Yeah, Victor.
Victor, yeah. I was cracking up
next to me.
because we were watching last week. We talked about we played the Catholic guy, and I'm watching him sitting there, and then all of a sudden he like gets out his phone and he's just like I'm like you could tell he was just like, I was like ready to just like hook this guy and pull him off the stage, but it was funny.
I had a question, Brad, in regards to what objections are brought against this on the IVF side. Is there ever connection made, or someone trying to make a connection, or really kind of blur the lines between conception, IVF and miscarriage in particular. We've dealt with the ectopic pregnancy argument and how, this is going to criminalize women who have ectopic pregnancies and who have miscarriages. I just think that people can try to take something like this and blur the lines and want to play around and dance in the gray area and say, oh, well, if you're saying, by necessary implication that IVF will have to be either destroyed as a practice or completely revitalized to include the care and dignity of human beings, what about a woman who keeps miscarrying? Like she's getting pregnant and she knows she's going to miscarry, so she's doing it anyways. Is that the same thing? Does she have intent to kill her child? I feel like people want to so badly dance in those gray areas and use that as an objection to the bill.
Yeah, absolutely not. That's not homicide, right? That is a natural death. And whether it's a mother, with a miscarriage, or even if it's someone that goes to a fertility clinic to adopt an embryo, right? Snowflake adoption. Let's say that they try that because, again, 40 to 60%, work. So that means a lot don't.
Right.
So, they go there and they want to adopt, right? They want to adopt that embryo. They go through the process and the baby doesn't, and the baby dies. You know what? No crime has been committed there, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one intended to destroy the life of that child. Yeah. No one, no negligence has been committed. Everybody's been, they're trying to save the life of this child.
Yeah.
Or someone in, a mother who just gets naturally pregnant, right? You want to have that child. And so a miscarriage is not in any way, affected by this bill at all. And we've even started adding that into the bill. It's totally unnecessary from a legal perspective, but just to make it doubly clear, that no one is talking about that. My wife, we've experienced 4 miscarriages, 4 children that we've lost to miscarriage, and those lives are precious, and they're equally valuable. But no crime has been committed.
Yeah.
And no one's going to be investigating, every single miscarriage. And sometimes people say that, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah, and so we'll wind down here. I just got one other thing to bring up kind of along those lines because I think this is important. I think we're going to hear this a lot. And this actually was, I think, the argument that was being pushed in last year's legislative session and even into the election. But I believe it was a doctor, I believe maybe it was an OBGYN or something that got up during that hearing in North Dakota. And the argument is, specifically usually like around ectopic pregnancies or something like that. They're like, I'm afraid to do anything at all because I might be criminally liable if this bill goes through.
Yep.
Which is just asinine. Every time I hear, I think I was like throwing something at the wall or something. I was like yelling out loud. My wife was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm just like, "Lies!" Like, anyways, so that's another. It's connected, different conversation, but connected, and we needed to be able to answer that. So I wanted to just bring that up quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, that's not homicide, right? And again, the bill covers that as well.
Yeah.
That all abolition bills, they say that. If you're trying to save the life of the mother, it results in the unintentional. You're not trying to kill the baby, but unintentionally in the process of saving the life of the mother, the child dies. Then that's not a crime, right? That's the opposite of abortion. It's as I heard someone describe it just recently. That's a rescue operation.
Exactly. That's
right. Abortion is you're going in like a mission to destroy, right? Whereas life of the mother is like a rescue operation. Totally different.
Yeah, and I mean, sorry.
I was going to say one more thing.
Oh, yeah,
kind of coming back to this executive order, if you were okay with us coming back to that.
Yeah, let me just real quick. I'll say this, and then
go for it.
So I was just going to say, it makes me mad when I hear those arguments. I mean, my mom was actually an ectopic pregnancy in the jungle in the Belgian Congo. Like my grandparents were missionaries in Africa. My mom was an ectopic pregnancy. Survived, and my grandma always called her miracle baby. So like when I hear these arguments that like it's an automatic, we have to terminate that pregnancy, it's like no we don't actually. And so anyways, I just wanted to throw that in there. But Go ahead and wrap up with what you're going to say.
Yeah, and there's ectopic in different locations.
Sure,
too,
sure.
But the most common fallopian tube, and that's very, very low survivability. But there's other kind of ectopics too. But the kind of coming back to this executive order President Trump has issued. Grateful for a lot of his executive orders he's issued. This one is like the opposite, right? This one is hideous. It doesn't, the legal effect of it, there is no real legal effect yet. It's just ordering, that somebody make recommendations on the IVF front. But it's so we'll see what those end up looking like.
Yeah.
But we do need to be, speaking to President Trump, informing him about this issue, how it actually works, the actual homicidal practices of much of the IVF industry. And, that are, like we're saying, they're outing themselves, when they come talk about these things. So we do need to be educating him, urging him, trying to reach him, before he does put in some kind of executive order that actually does have legal effect. And so I'm grateful that there is a conversation going on about it. You have people across the anti-abortion spectrum, right, from, kind of even establishment pro-lifers that are, speaking to him, to abolitionists, speaking to him, and a lot of activity being, that's happening. So I just encourage people to keep doing that, obviously respectfully. We can do it in a way that, God says, honor the king. We're making an appeal to those in authority, and we need to be doing that. Scripture's full of examples of that, of how we do that, and we should be following those and not just reacting in the flesh. Even if it's for a good cause, we still need to approach him as our authority, as our president, honor him in that way. But at the same time, not lie to him, or in any way, keep from telling the truth and speaking to him as because he's not just our authority, he's also our representative who represents us. And so even there, we have a certain amount of authority. We have all the authority we need from God and God's word to tell them what God says. But even as our representative, we also have authority to tell them, here's what we want you to do. And so I encourage people to keep doing that.
That's a good balance between speaking prophetically and showing recognition and honor for the office that God has placed the ruler in. And I think that we need to hold those two things together.
Yeah, and I'll just end with this. I mean, a lot of times how the left wins arguments or how they defeat bills is through, like, just soundbite criticisms, right? Little things, little comment here, little comment there that they throw out there, have no idea what they're saying. And those usually win because people are loud. Anyways, we don't want to be like that, right? My point is, like, if we're going to criticize something, we need to make sure we're educated on it. We've thought through it logically. We have a logical response. And I say that because I've seen people literally that were 2 weeks ago praising President Trump for some of the awesome pro-life stuff he was doing, and then he signs this executive order, and then they turn around with, this is the most evil executive order ever signed. And I was just like, is it? I'm not saying it's not, but let's explain that. Why do you think that is? And it's just like those little soundbite things. It's like, we need to be better than that. We need to be precise in our language, and we need to define terms. And we're not going to win arguments if we're not unable to do that. So, awesome. Well, thank you, Brian. This was really, really an awesome conversation. I hadn't intended on doing this, getting into this conversation yesterday, but when we talked, but this was good. I'm grateful for it. So, Brad, where can people find you or help you support what you're doing?
Yeah, they can follow our work, Foundation to Abolish Abortion, on all social media stuff, and then our website, faa.life, or follow me on X, Bradley W. Pierce.
And you guys put out some really awesome documentaries this last year, right?
Yes, we'd love for people to check out our abortion-free docuseries. They can go check it out on our YouTube channel or go to abortionfree.com. And it just talks about the state of abortion after Dobbs overturned Roe, and exposes a lot of the the pro-life movement, interviews pro-life leaders, and then also shows how there have been killing bills of abolition, and really how should Christians be thinking about this issue and acting biblically? So
Yeah.
I encourage people to check that out at abortionfree.com.
Yeah, it's excellent. I've actually seen some people in different states, different threads we're on, that said they got into the fight because they saw some of those. So kudos. Awesome. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it, Brad, and we're always grateful to have you on, and grateful for you and your friendship and just working together with you to end abortion. So
Y'all too. Always.
All right, man. We'll
Appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, we'll continue to pray for you and the different bills. Bradley's just as busy as we are, if not busier. So, I mean, this is the truth, guys. Like, what do we have? We're looking at 20 states, I think, 21, whatever. I think you've probably written the majority of those bills. Am I correct?
Almost all of them.
Almost all of them.
Not all of them, but almost.
Almost all of them, yeah. That's a lot. It's a lot of work. So, all right, man, we're grateful for you. And just at that point, I just want to, again, thank some of our sponsors here. So we got Amtech Blades, Bill Rapier. I just was texting with him today. Love that brother. You can go to amtechblades.com and put Apologia in the coupon code. Get 5% off your order, and he matches 5% to help us save babies. So grateful for him. And then, of course, you can go to shop.apologiastudios.com. Oh, I almost forgot our new sponsor. Page 50, we mentioned them last week. Super cool what they're doing. Page 50 is a full-service marketing and media production company that wants to help Christians recapture the economic and civil spheres. I mentioned last week is a good friend of Brian Gunter, who's a good friend of ours, and so Brian's another dude wearing a lot of hats, doing some good work. So we're grateful for Page 50, and go check them out. They're going to be at ReformCon. So if you come, we'd love to have you. You can come meet Stuart there at ReformCon. Which reminds me, I mentioned it last week. We haven't quite got the promo up yet. Hopefully, still this week. But we did announce 2 specials last week, 2 promos. One is for pastors. We want you to bring your wife. We'll get you in free. You can just put pastors in the coupon code when you go to register at ReformCon. And we're going to throw in an after party, VIP after party ticket for you and your wife to have a date. So that was the first one. The second one is, of course, then for our border agents, first responders, active military, legislators. You can put border in the coupon code, get you, and then for free as well. And on Saturday, we're going to actually have some, at least one workshop on borders and biblical borders and what does God say about immigration. We're going to be very close to the border. Very, very close.
Appropriate.
So we're like, you know what? This is a good conversation to have. And we have a man in our church that works for ICE, and he loved the idea and was like, yes, I want that. I need those questions answered. And I think there's a lot of guys like that. So anyways, that's coming up very quickly. So you can go to reformcon.org to get your tickets. And I will stick around for an after show. Zach's got to bounce. So all accessors, please hop on over there, and I'll join you in a few minutes. Bradley, thanks again, brother. Zach, any closing thoughts?
It's a great show. I think it'll be very useful and helpful and informative for people that are just getting off the ground with their knowledge of this process and how it relates to what we're trying to accomplish in the legislative realm.
Amen. True that. All right, y'all. Peace out. We'll see you next week.
Later.